The small apartment on the east side of the city barely had enough room for the old upright piano that sat against the wall. Its keys were yellowed with age, and several notes stuck when pressed too hard. But to little Maya Chen, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She was only 5 years old when she first touched those keys, creating sounds that filled her heart with something she couldn't explain. Her mother, Lin, watched from the kitchen doorway, a dish towel in her hands and worry lines creasing her forehead. Lin worked 2 jobs to keep their tiny home. She cleaned offices at night and worked at a grocery store during the day. Maya's father had left when she was just a baby, leaving nothing but debts and broken promises. The piano had been Lin's mother's instrument, the only valuable thing passed down through their family. Lin had never learned to play it herself, but she remembered her mother's fingers dancing across the keys during happier times. Maya's obsession with the piano started innocently enough. She would climb onto the bench whenever her mother was home, pressing keys randomly at first, then slowly finding patterns that pleased her ear. Unlike other children who lost interest in things quickly, Maya seemed to grow more attached to the instrument with each passing day. She would hum melodies she heard on the radio, then try to recreate them on the piano. Some days, Lin would come home exhausted and find her daughter still sitting at the piano, completely lost in her own world. When Maya turned 6, her kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Robertson, called Lin in for a meeting. Lin's heart sank, assuming her daughter had done something wrong. Instead, Mrs. Robertson smiled warmly and told her that Maya had an unusual gift. During music class, Maya could identify notes perfectly and had taught herself to play a simple song she'd heard only twice. The teacher suggested that Maya needed proper piano lessons, that her talent was too special to waste. Lin felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. Piano lessons cost money they didn't have. Their budget was stretched so thin that sometimes Lin skipped meals to make sure Maya had enough to eat. How could she possibly afford weekly lessons with a music teacher? She thanked Mrs. Robertson politely, but explained their situation. The teacher's face fell with understanding and sympathy. That night, Lin sat at their small kitchen table, looking at bills and bank statements. The numbers swam before her tired eyes. She thought about her own mother, who had dreamed of becoming a concert pianist but had to give it up to raise her family. Was history repeating itself? Would Maya's gift die simply because they were poor? The thought made Lin's throat tighten with unshed tears. She made a decision that night. She would take on extra hours at the grocery store, picking up weekend shifts. She would cut their expenses even more. They would eat simpler meals, and she would wear her old clothes longer. Somehow, she would find the money for piano lessons. Her daughter's dreams would not die in this cramped apartment. Lin found a music school 3 bus rides away that offered lessons at a slightly reduced rate. The teacher, Mr. Petrov, was an elderly Russian man with thick glasses and hands gnarled by arthritis. He had been a concert pianist in his youth, performing in halls across Europe. Now, in his retirement, he taught children in a small studio that smelled of old books and wood polish. When Lin brought Maya for her first lesson, Mr. Petrov was skeptical. He had seen many parents push their children into music lessons, convinced their child was special. Usually, these children were average at best, forced into something they didn't truly love. But when 6-year-old Maya sat at his grand piano and played the simple melody she had taught herself, something in his expression changed. He asked her to play it again. Then he played a different melody and asked her to repeat it. Maya did perfectly. After hearing it only once, Mr. Petrov sat back in his chair, removing his glasses to clean them slowly. He looked at Lin with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Your daughter," he said in his thick accent, "has what we call perfect pitch. This is very rare. Maybe 1 in 10,000 people have this gift." He paused, studying Maya, who was swinging her legs happily on the piano bench. But having a gift is not enough. She must work very hard. Harder than other children. Are you prepared for this? Lin nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was agreeing to. Mr. Petrov quoted his price for weekly lessons. It was less than other teachers, but still more than Lin had hoped. She swallowed hard and agreed, already calculating in her mind how many extra hours she would need to work. The lessons began. Every Tuesday evening, Lynn and Maya would take 3 buses across the city to Mr. Petrov's studio. Maya would sit at his beautiful grand piano, so different from their old, upright, at home, and absorb everything he taught her like a sponge. Mr. Petrov was a strict teacher, never giving praise easily, but Lynn could see the way he watched Maya. There was something like wonder in his old eyes. At home, Maya practiced on their old piano for hours each day. The neighbors sometimes complained about the noise, but Lynn defended her daughter fiercely. She would stand outside their apartment door, listening to the music flowing from within, and feel her exhaustion lift slightly. Every difficult note Maya mastered, every piece she learned, felt like a small victory against the poverty that surrounded them. But victories were hard won in their world. As Maya's 7th birthday approached, their situation became more desperate. Lynn's car broke down, adding expensive repairs to their already tight budget. The grocery store cut her hours. Medical bills from a bad cold Maya caught piled up on the kitchen table. Lynn looked at those bills, then at the piano lesson schedule on their refrigerator, and felt despair creeping in. She knew she might have to make a choice soon. The choice between medicine and music, between practical needs and impossible dreams. Maya was still so young. Perhaps it was foolish to invest so much in piano lessons when they could barely afford food. Perhaps Mrs. Robertson and Mr. Petrov were wrong. Perhaps Maya's gift wasn't as special as they thought. These doubts haunted Lynn as she worked her shifts, scrubbing floors and stocking shelves. But every time she came home and heard Maya playing, teaching herself new pieces from an old book Mr. Petrov had given her, the doubts faded. Her daughter wasn't just talented, she was passionate. The piano wasn't just an instrument to Maya, it was her voice, her joy, her whole world. Lynn decided to hold on a little longer. She would find a way, somehow. She had to believe that Maya's gift meant something, that it would lead somewhere better than this small apartment with its worn furniture and empty refrigerator. She had to believe that dreams could survive, even in poverty. Maya turned 8 years old on a cold February morning. There was no party, no cake with candles, just a small cupcake Lynn bought from the grocery store's discount rack. Maya didn't seem to mind. She woke up excited because Mr. Petrov had promised to teach her a new piece that week. Something by Chopin that she'd heard on a classical music station. The lessons had continued for 2 years now, though there had been weeks when Lynn had to call Mr. Petrov and cancel because she simply couldn't afford both the lesson and groceries. The old teacher never complained. Sometimes, he told Lynn not to worry about payment, that they could settle up later. Lynn kept careful track of what she owed him, promising herself she would pay back every dollar. Mr. Petrov had begun entering Maya into local competitions. These were small events, usually held in church halls or community centers, where young piano students performed for judges. The entry fees were minimal, and Mr. Petrov often paid them himself. He told Lynn that Maya needed performance experience, that she needed to learn how to play in front of audiences. Maya's first competition was terrifying for both mother and daughter. The other children came from wealthy families, wearing expensive dresses and polished shoes. Maya wore her best dress, which Lynn had bought second-hand and carefully mended. Her shoes were too big, because Lynn had bought them large so Maya could grow into them. As they sat in the audience waiting for Maya's turn, Lynn felt her stomach twist with anxiety. When Maya walked onto the small stage, she looked tiny and scared. She sat at the piano, and for a horrible moment, Lynn thought her daughter might freeze. But then Maya's hands touched the keys, and something magical happened. The nervous little girl disappeared, replaced by a confident musician. The music that flowed from the piano was beautiful, technically perfect, and filled with emotion that seemed impossible from someone so young. The audience fell silent, transfixed. Even the other parents, who had been chatting quietly, stopped talking to listen. When Maya finished, there was a moment of absolute stillness before applause erupted through the hall. Maya stood and bowed, just as Mr. Petrov had taught her, her face flushed with happiness. She won 3rd place that day. It wasn't first place, but Mr. Petrov was thrilled. He told Lin that Maya had competed against children who were older and had been training longer. Third place was extraordinary. He pulled Lin aside after the ceremony and spoke to her seriously. "Your daughter needs better training," he said. "I have taught her everything I can at this level. She needs to study at a proper music academy, with teachers who specialize in training concert pianists." He saw the look on Lin's face and continued quickly. "There are scholarships, programs for talented students. We should apply." Lin felt overwhelmed. A music academy sounded impossibly expensive and far beyond their reach. But Mr. Petrov was persistent. He helped Lin fill out application forms for the Riverside Music Academy, a prestigious institution across the city. He wrote letters of recommendation, praising Maya's perfect pitch, her dedication, and her emotional connection to music. He even recorded videos of Maya playing on his phone to submit with the application. Weeks passed. Lin tried not to think about the academy, tried not to hope too much. She had learned that hope could be dangerous when you were poor. Every disappointment hurt a little more when you had allowed yourself to dream. She focused on work, on making sure Maya had food and clothes, on keeping up with the piano lessons they could barely afford. Then the letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, in a thick cream-colored envelope, with the Riverside Music Academy logo embossed on the corner. Lin's hands shook as she opened it. She had to read the first paragraph 3 times before the words made sense. Maya had been accepted. She had been accepted with a full scholarship that would cover tuition, instrument access, and even provide a small stipend for transportation. The letter praised her exceptional talent and rare musical gift. They wanted her to start in the fall semester. Lin sat down on their worn couch and cried. She cried for the relief, for the validation of all those extra shifts and skipped meals, for the death of the fear that Maya's talent would be wasted. When Maya came home from school and saw the letter, she jumped up and down with excitement, not fully understanding what it meant, but knowing it was something wonderful. The academy was like nothing Maya had experienced before. The building was beautiful, with high ceilings, polished floors, and practice rooms filled with pristine grand pianos. The other students came from wealthy families who could afford private tutors and expensive instruments. They talked about summer music camps in Europe and private concerts in their homes. Maya felt out of place in her second-hand clothes and worn backpack. During her first week, she overheard 2 girls talking about her in the bathroom. They giggled about her cheap shoes and wondered how someone like her had gotten into the academy. Maya stood in the stall, frozen, feeling shame burn through her chest. But when she sat at the piano, none of that mattered. Her new teacher, Professor Steinberg, was a renowned concert pianist who had performed in major halls around the world. She was known for being extremely selective about her students and brutally honest in her assessments. During Maya's first lesson, Professor Steinberg listened to her play with an unreadable expression. When Maya finished, Professor Steinberg was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "You have natural talent, but you have developed many bad habits. Your technique needs complete reconstruction. This will be painful and frustrating. You will feel like you are getting worse before you get better." Many students quit at this stage. Maya felt her heart sink. She had thought she was good. Mr. Petrov had always seemed pleased with her progress. Now this famous teacher was telling her she was essentially starting over. Professor Steinberg must have seen the devastation on Maya's face, because her expression softened slightly. "I am telling you this because you have something rare. You have the gift, the real gift. But gifts alone are not enough. You must be willing to work harder than everyone else in this academy. You must be willing to practice until your fingers hurt, to play the same passage hundreds of times until it is perfect. Are you willing to do this?" Maya thought about her mother working 2 jobs, about the sacrifices that had brought her here. She thought about the old piano at home and the years of practice in their tiny apartment. She lifted her chin and met Professor Steinberg's eyes. "Yes," she said. "I'm willing." The work was brutal. Professor Steinberg made Maya break down everything she had learned and rebuild it from the foundation. They worked on hand position, posture, the way Maya used her whole body to create sound. Maya practiced scales for hours until her fingers cramped. She played technical exercises that seemed boring and pointless, wanting desperately to play the beautiful pieces she loved. Some days, she came home frustrated to tears. Lynn would hold her daughter and listen to her complaints. Not always understanding the technical problems, but feeling every bit of Maya's frustration. On the worst days, Maya would say she wanted to quit, that it was too hard, that she wasn't good enough. Lynn never let her quit. She would remind Maya of how far they had come, of the scholarship that hundreds of other children had wanted. She would make Maya practice even when the girl wanted to give up. It was hard love, the kind that pushed instead of coddling, but Lynn knew it was what Maya needed. Slowly, over months of grinding practice, things began to change. Maya's technique improved dramatically. The exercises that had seemed pointless suddenly made the difficult passages in real pieces easier. Professor Steinberg's criticism became slightly less harsh. Sometimes, she even nodded with approval. By the end of her first year at the academy, Maya had transformed as a pianist. She still had the natural gift, the perfect pitch, the emotional connection to music. But now she had the technical foundation to express that gift fully. When she played, it was like watching someone speak a language they had been born knowing, but had only now learned to articulate clearly. Professor Steinberg pulled Lynn aside after one of Maya's recitals. "Your daughter," she said, "has the potential to be truly great. Not just good, not just talented, but great. She could perform on major stages if she continues on this path." She paused. "But the path will only get harder from here." Maya was 11 when the pain started. It began as a small ache in her right wrist, something she ignored because she had an important competition coming up. Professor Steinberg had entered her into the National Young Musicians Competition, a prestigious event where winners received scholarships, performance opportunities, and recognition from major music institutions. The competition was in 6 weeks, and Maya was preparing a challenging program. Chopin's Ballade No. 1, Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody, and several other pieces that demanded technical brilliance and emotional depth. She practiced 6 hours every day after school, pushing herself harder than ever before. The pain in her wrist grew worse. Some mornings, she woke up and couldn't make a fist. The joint felt hot and swollen. She started taking pain medication from the drugstore, hiding the pills in her backpack so her mother wouldn't worry. When Lynn asked if everything was okay, Maya always smiled and said she was fine. 3 weeks before the competition, Maya's hand seized up completely during practice. She was in the middle of a difficult passage when her fingers simply stopped responding. The pain shot up her arm like electricity. She gasped and pulled her hand away from the keys, cradling it against her chest. Professor Steinberg noticed immediately. She came over and gently examined Maya's wrist, her face growing serious. The joint was visibly swollen, and Maya winced when the professor touched it. "How long has this been hurting?" Professor Steinberg asked. Maya wanted to lie, but the concern in her teacher's eyes made her tell the truth. "A few weeks," she admitted quietly. "Maybe a month." Professor Steinberg's expression turned stern. "You should have told someone immediately. This is serious, Maya. You could have permanent damage." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling your mother. You need to see a doctor right away." The doctor's appointment was expensive, even with the basic insurance Lynn had. The orthopedic specialist examined Maya's wrist and took X-rays. His diagnosis was sobering. Maya had developed severe tendonitis from overuse, and there were early signs of repetitive strain injury. If she continued playing without treatment, she could cause permanent damage that would end her piano career before it truly began. "She needs to stop playing completely," the doctor said, looking at Lynn. "For at least 2 months, possibly 3. Physical therapy, anti-inflammatory medication, and complete rest. No piano at all." Maya felt the world tilt beneath her. The competition was in 3 weeks. She had been preparing for months. This was her chance to prove herself at a national level, to show that a girl from a poor family could compete with the wealthy kids who had every advantage. And now the doctor was telling her she couldn't play at all. "What if I'm careful?" Maya asked desperately. "What if I just play a little, just for the competition?" The doctor shook his head firmly. If you play in that competition, you will almost certainly cause permanent damage. Your career would be over before you're 12 years old. Is one competition worth that risk? The drive home was silent. Lynn glanced at her daughter's tear-stained face, her heart breaking. She knew how much this competition meant to Maya. She also knew they couldn't afford to risk permanent injury. The medical bills from this one appointment were already more than they could afford. If Maya needed surgery or long-term treatment, it would destroy them financially. That evening, Maya sat at their old upright piano, staring at the keys but not touching them. She felt like something inside her had died. Professor Steinberg called to check on her, and Maya told her about the doctor's orders through tears. "I understand your disappointment," Professor Steinberg said gently. "But the doctor is right. You must think long-term, not just about one competition. There will be other competitions, other opportunities, but only if you heal properly now." Maya withdrew the competition entry. She watched from the audience as other students performed the pieces she had prepared. One of them, a boy named Christopher from a wealthy family, won first place playing the same Chopin ballade Maya had practiced for months. She clapped politely, feeling numb inside. The physical therapy sessions were painful and discouraging. The therapist made her do exercises with resistance bands and squeeze therapy balls. Progress was slow. Some days her wrist felt better, and she would hope she could start playing again soon. Other days the pain flared up, and she felt despairing. At school, Maya struggled to focus. Her identity had been so wrapped up in being a pianist that she didn't know who she was without it. The other academy students talked about their practice schedules and upcoming performances, and she had nothing to contribute. She felt invisible, irrelevant. One afternoon, she came home from school to find her mother sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread around her. Lynn looked up, and Maya could see the stress lines deep around her eyes. "What's wrong?" Maya asked. Lynn hesitated, then decided her daughter deserved honesty. "The medical bills," she said quietly. "The insurance didn't cover as much as I thought, and I had to cut back my hours at work to take you to physical therapy appointments. We're behind on rent." Maya felt guilt crash over her like a wave. All of this was her fault. If she hadn't pushed herself so hard, if she had told someone about the pain earlier, if she wasn't trying to be a pianist at all, her mother wouldn't be drowning in bills. "Maybe I should quit," Maya said suddenly. "Quit the academy, quit piano. You could work normal hours again. We could save money." Lynn looked at her daughter sharply. "Is that what you want? To quit?" Maya thought about it honestly. Despite the pain, despite the frustration, despite everything, the answer was clear. "No," she whispered. "I don't want to quit, but I don't want to be the reason we lose our home either." Lynn reached across the table and took Maya's good hand. "We will figure this out," she said firmly. "We always do. Your gift is not a burden, Maya. It's precious. We just have to be smarter about protecting it." Professor Steinberg heard about their financial troubles through the academy's administration. She called Lynn and offered something unexpected. She wanted to take Maya on as a private student at no charge. She would give Maya extra lessons once her wrist healed, help her catch up on what she had missed, and prepare her for future competitions. She had never done this for any student before, but she believed Maya was special enough to warrant the exception. Lynn cried when she hung up the phone. Acts of kindness felt miraculous when you were poor, like small lights in overwhelming darkness. 3 months after her injury, Maya was cleared to start playing again. But her doctor was stern. She could practice only 1 hour per day for the first month, gradually increasing as her wrist tolerated it. She had to stop immediately if she felt any pain. She needed to do her therapy exercises daily, and she would need to learn better practice techniques to avoid Maya's first day back at the piano was both joyful and frustrating. Her fingers felt clumsy, like they had forgotten everything they knew. Passages that used to be easy now felt impossible. She could only practice for an hour before her wrist started aching, forcing her to stop when she desperately wanted to continue. The other students at the academy had moved forward while she was injured. They were learning new pieces, performing in recitals, competing in competitions. Maya felt like she was falling behind, watching everyone else succeed while she struggled with basic exercises. Professor Steinberg was patient but firm. She made Maya focus on technique and efficiency, teaching her how to achieve the same results with less physical strain. She introduced Maya to Alexander technique, a method of conscious movement that helped reduce tension. She taught her about practice structure, about the importance of regular breaks and proper warm-ups. "You are learning something valuable," Professor Steinberg told her, during one particularly frustrating lesson. "You are learning your limitations, and you are learning how to work within them. This will make you a better musician in the long run." Many talented pianists burn out because they never learn these lessons. Slowly, over many months, Maya rebuilt her playing. She was more careful now, more aware of her body. She learned to recognize the early signs of strain and stop before causing damage. Her practice sessions were shorter but more focused. She was learning not just how to play the piano, but how to sustain a lifetime career without destroying her body. By the time she turned 12, Maya was playing better than ever before. Her technique was cleaner, more efficient. She had lost some practice time to injury, but she had gained wisdom and resilience. Professor Steinberg entered her into the Regional Young Artists Competition, a smaller event than the national competition she had missed, but still prestigious. Maya won first place. When they announced her name, she walked onto the stage in the same big shoes. The same mended dress, but with her head held high. She accepted the trophy and the prize money, which Lynn would use to catch up on their bills. And when she sat down to perform her winner's encore, she played with a maturity and emotional depth that surprised everyone in the audience. The injury had taught her something important. Talent alone wasn't enough. Hard work alone wasn't enough. Even dedication alone wasn't enough. You needed all of those things, plus wisdom, patience, and the ability to take care of yourself for the long journey ahead. Maya was learning that success wasn't a straight line upward. It was full of setbacks and detours, and the only way forward was to keep going despite them. Maya was 14 when the rejection letter arrived. It came in a thin envelope from the International Youth Music Festival, one of the most prestigious summer programs in the world. Professor Steinberg had encouraged her to apply, calling it a crucial stepping stone for serious young musicians. The program selected only 30 pianists from thousands of applicants worldwide, offering them the chance to study with master teachers and perform in renowned concert halls. Maya had spent weeks on her application, recording audition videos and writing essays about her musical journey. She had allowed herself to hope, to imagine spending a summer immersed in music with other talented young people. The thin envelope told her everything before she even opened it. "We received applications from many talented musicians," the letter read. "Unfortunately, we are unable to offer you a place in this year's program. We encourage you to continue your musical studies and apply again in the future." The polite rejection felt like a punch to the stomach. Maya crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash, then went to her room and cried. She had worked so hard since her injury, practicing diligently, performing well in regional competitions, but apparently, it wasn't enough. She wasn't good enough for the international stage. Lynn found her hours later, still in her room with red eyes. "What happened?" she asked softly. Maya told her about the rejection. Lynn sat on the bed and put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "I know it hurts," she said, "but one rejection doesn't define you. You keep going. What's the point?" Maya asked bitterly. "I'm competing against kids who have famous teachers, who travel to Europe for summer programs, who have parents who can afford anything they need. How am I supposed to compete with that?" It was a question Lynn couldn't fully answer. She knew her daughter was right. They were fighting an uphill battle against privilege and wealth, but giving up wasn't an option, so she said the only thing she could. "You're talented, Maya. You work hard. That has to count for something." The next day, Professor Steinberg called Maya into her office. She had heard about the rejection from the festival program. "I want you to listen to something," she said, pulling up a video on her computer. It showed a young pianist performing at the same international festival Maya had been rejected from. The girl in the video was technically proficient, But there was something mechanical about her playing. Every note was perfect, but the music felt cold, calculated. It was impressive, but not moving. This girl was accepted into the program 3 years ago, Professor Steinberg said. She had every advantage. Wealthy parents, private tutors since age 3, a Steinway grand piano in her home. She had perfect technique and played everything correctly. She paused. She quit music 2 years ago. She's studying pre-law now. Maya looked at her teacher, confused about the point of this story. Professor Steinberg continued. The selection committees for these programs look for technical perfection because it's easy to measure. They see thousands of applicants, and they choose the ones who make no mistakes. But perfect technique doesn't make a great musician. Passion makes a great musician. Connection to the music makes a great musician. You have something this girl never had. Something many of those accepted students will never have. What's that? Maya asked quietly. You have a reason to play, Professor Steinberg said. Music isn't just an accomplishment for you, or a way to impress people. It's your voice, your way of expressing everything you feel. That's rare and precious. Don't let one rejection make you forget that. The words helped, but they didn't erase the sting of rejection. Maya threw herself back into practice, but with a new intensity born partly from determination and partly from anger. She would show them they had made a mistake in rejecting her. Around this time, social media was becoming important in the music world. Young musicians were posting performance videos on YouTube and Instagram, building followings and getting noticed by talent scouts and record labels. Maya's classmates at the academy talked constantly about their online presence. Comparing view counts and follower numbers, Maya had never thought much about social media. Her family's old computer barely worked, and they couldn't afford a smartphone with a good camera. But one of her classmates, a girl named Sophie who had always been kind to her, offered to help. Sophie had professional camera equipment because her father was a videographer. She suggested they film some of Maya's performances and post them online. They started with a simple video of Maya playing Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor on one of the Academy's grand pianos. Sophie filmed it beautifully, using multiple camera angles and good lighting. They posted it on YouTube with a simple title, Rachmaninoff, Prelude by Maya Chen. Nothing happened for the first few days. The video got a handful of views, probably from their classmates. Maya tried not to feel disappointed. She knew going viral was unlikely, especially for classical music. Then, 2 weeks later, something shifted. A popular classical music blogger with a large following somehow discovered the video and shared it with her audience. Writing, "Who is this young pianist? Her interpretation of Rachmaninoff is absolutely stunning. Watch and be moved." The views started climbing, hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Comments flooded in from around the world. Professional musicians praised her technique and emotional depth. Music lovers said her playing moved them to tears. Teachers asked where she studied. The video was shared across social media platforms. Maya watched the numbers climb with disbelief. She read comments from people in Germany, Japan, Australia, Brazil. Strangers from around the world were connecting with her music, feeling something from her performance. It was overwhelming and thrilling. A music journalist reached out asking to interview her. She wanted to know Maya's story, where she trained, what inspired her, what her goals were. Maya did the interview nervously over video call, sitting at their old kitchen table with the peeling wallpaper visible in the background. She answered honestly about her life, her mother's sacrifices, her struggles with injury and rejection. The article was published on a major classical music website. The headline read, "The Young Pianist Breaking Barriers, Maya Chen's Journey from Poverty to Prodigy." The article was sympathetic but honest about the challenges Maya faced. It quoted Professor Steinberg extensively, praising Maya's talent and dedication. It included links to her video. The response was enormous. More people watched her videos. She gained thousands of social media followers overnight. Musicians and music lovers from around the world sent messages of encouragement. Some sent small donations to help support her music education. A local music store offered to donate a better keyboard for her home practice. But not all attention was positive. Some comments were cruel. People accused her of using her family's poverty to gain sympathy. Others said she was overhyped, that her playing was good but not exceptional. Some criticized her appearance in the videos, mocking her cheap clothes and outdated hairstyle. A few commenters insisted that truly talented musicians didn't need to use social media. That she was somehow cheapening classical music by posting online. Maya tried to ignore the negative comments, but they hurt. She had never asked for pity or sympathy. She had just played piano, poured her heart into the music, and someone had happened to notice. Was it wrong to share her story honestly? Was she supposed to pretend her background didn't matter? Professor Steinberg counseled her through this new challenge. Public attention is a double-edged sword, she said. It can open doors, but it also invites criticism. You have to develop thick skin. Focus on the music, not the noise around it. The attention did open doors. A talent agency specializing in classical musicians reached out, offering to represent her. They saw potential in building her profile, booking performances, and helping her career develop. Lin was skeptical at first, worried about contracts and obligations they might not be able to meet. But Professor Steinberg reviewed the contract and advised them. It was a good opportunity, with fair terms. With the agency's help, Maya started getting invited to perform at small venues around the city. Community concerts, charity events, private gatherings. The performances didn't pay much, but they provided valuable experience. Maya learned how to handle stage fright, how to connect with live audiences, how to recover from mistakes without panicking. One performance changed everything. A prestigious music festival in the city invited her to perform as part of their Emerging Artists series. The venue was a beautiful historic theater, much larger than anywhere Maya had played before. The audience would include music critics, wealthy patrons, and influential figures in the classical music world. Maya prepared for weeks, choosing pieces that showcased both her technical skill and emotional depth. She practiced until her repertoire was flawless. Until she could play from muscle memory, even when her mind was racing with anxiety. Lin took the day off work to attend, wearing her best dress and sitting in the audience with her hands clasped nervously. When Maya walked onto that stage, she felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. The years of sacrifice, the poverty, the pain, the rejections, the doubt. She sat at the grand piano, adjusted the bench, took a deep breath, and began to play. The performance at the historic theater was transformative. Maya poured everything into the music that night, every emotion, every struggle, every moment of doubt and triumph. When the final notes faded into silence, there was a breathless pause before the audience erupted into thunderous applause. People rose to their feet. Maya bowed, her heart pounding, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Among the audience members was Marcus Whitfield, an influential music critic whose reviews could make or break young careers. He wrote for a major national newspaper and had a reputation for being brutally honest. The next morning, his review appeared online. Maya read it with trembling hands. "Last night, I witnessed the emergence of a genuine talent," Whitfield wrote. Maya Chen, a 14-year-old pianist with limited resources but unlimited passion, delivered one of the most moving performances I have seen in years. Her technical skill is impressive for her age, but what sets her apart is her emotional authenticity. She doesn't play notes. She tells stories. She doesn't perform music. She lives it. Keep your eye on this young artist. She has the potential to become something truly special. The review changed things overnight. More performance invitations arrived. Her social media following exploded. Music schools and summer programs that had previously rejected her suddenly reached out, suggesting she'll apply again. Even the International Youth Music Festival, which had turned her down just months earlier, contacted her agency, asking if she would be interested in participating as a special guest performer. Maya felt vindicated, but also conflicted. Part of her wanted to reject the festival's offer, to tell them she didn't need their validation now. But Professor Steinberg advised otherwise. "Don't let pride close doors," she said. "Take every legitimate opportunity to grow as a musician. The journey is long, and you'll need all the help you can get." At 15, Maya spent the summer at the International Youth Music Festival she had dreamed about a year earlier. The experience was intense and eye-opening. She studied with world-renowned teachers who pushed her beyond what she thought were her limits. She met talented young musicians from around the globe, many of whom had every advantage she lacked, but some of whom shared similar struggles. One evening, she met a young violinist from South Korea named Jin. He came from a poor family too, and had worked multiple jobs while practicing violin. They sat together after a concert, sharing stories about their journeys. "People think talent is enough," Jin said, "but talent just gets you to the starting line. Everything else is about survival, about refusing to quit when the world tells you you're not good enough." Maya felt understood in a way she rarely did. They became friends, supporting each other through the challenging program. It helped Maya realize she wasn't alone in her struggles, that there were others fighting similar battles against poverty and limited resources. When Maya returned home from the festival, she was a different person, more confident, more skilled, but also more aware of how far she still had to go. She was competing not just with local talents now, but with the best young pianists in the world. The stakes felt higher, the pressure more intense. Her mother noticed the change. Lin had watched her daughter transform from a little girl pressing random keys to a serious young artist carrying enormous expectations. Sometimes she worried that Maya had lost parts of her childhood to music, that the pressure was too much for someone so young. But whenever she mentioned this concern, Maya insisted she was fine, that this was what she wanted. The truth was more complicated. Maya loved music, loved performing, loved the piano with her whole heart. But the public attention, the constant judgment, the pressure to be exceptional every single time she played, was exhausting. She couldn't have an off day without people noticing. She couldn't make mistakes without comments flooding social media. Every performance felt like a test she couldn't afford to fail. At 16, Maya was invited to compete in the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition's junior division. The Van Cliburn was one of the most prestigious piano competitions in the world, with a history of launching major careers. Even being invited to compete was an honor. Actually, winning would be like. The competition was in Texas, requiring travel and accommodation expenses that Lin couldn't afford. Maya's agency helped fundraise through her social media following. Strangers who had been moved by her story and her music donated money to help send her to the competition. Within 2 weeks, they had raised enough for her flights and hotel. Maya arrived in Texas, feeling overwhelmed. The other competitors were incredibly talented, many of them from wealthy families with famous teachers. They had custom-tailored concert dresses and expensive instruments. Maya wore a dress her mother had bought on sale, altered at home to fit better. Her hands shook as she waited backstage for her preliminary round. The competition lasted a week, with multiple rounds eliminating contestants until only the finalists remained. Each round required learning and perfecting new repertoire, performing under intense pressure with judges scrutinizing every note. Maya made it through the preliminary round, then the second round, each time barely believing she had advanced. The semifinal round was the most challenging. She had to perform a complete Beethoven sonata and a virtuosic showpiece by Liszt. The night before, she couldn't sleep, running through the pieces mentally, worrying about every difficult passage. She called her mother at 2 in the morning, needing to hear Lin's voice. "You've already proven yourself by getting this far," Lin said gently. "Win or lose, tomorrow, I'm proud of you. Just play from your heart, like you always do." Maya took a deep breath. "I'm scared, Mum. What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up," Lin said, "and life goes on. You're 16 years old, Maya. You have so much time ahead of you. This competition isn't your only chance. It's just one step on a very long journey." The words helped. The next day, Maya walked onto the stage with less fear. She sat at the piano and reminded herself why she loved music in the first place. Not for the competition, not for the recognition, but because it was the language her soul spoke. She played beautifully. Not perfectly, there were small mistakes, tiny imperfections that only trained ears might notice. But she played with passion and authenticity, with the emotional depth that Marcus Whitfield had praised in his review. When she finished, she felt satisfied regardless of the outcome. Maya didn't win the Van Cliburn competition. She placed third, which was remarkable, but not the fairy tale ending some people had hoped for. The winner was a 17-year-old from Russia who had been training at the Moscow Conservatory since age 6. The second-place finisher was from a prestigious music family in Germany. Some of her social media followers expressed disappointment. A few even criticized her performance, saying she had choked under pressure. Maya read these comments lying in her hotel room, feeling the familiar sting of not being good enough. But then she thought about what Professor Steinberg had told her years ago. Competitions are just one measure of success, and often not the most important one. The goal isn't to win every competition. The goal is to build a sustainable career as a musician, to keep growing and learning and connecting with audiences. Third place at the Van Cliburn Junior competition was extraordinary for someone with her background and limited training opportunities. It proved she could compete at the highest levels. It earned her prize money that helped her family catch up on bills, and it brought new opportunities. A recording label approached her about making her first professional album. A concert series in Europe invited her to perform. Universities with prestigious music programs reached out about scholarships. The doors that were opening weren't because she won first place in a single competition, but because she had proven her talent and dedication over years of consistent work. Maya chose to focus on these positives rather than dwelling on not winning. She was learning that success wasn't about one big moment of triumph, but about steady progress over time. Every performance, every competition, every lesson learned was a building block in a much larger structure she was constructing. The recording studio was smaller than Maya had imagined. She was 17 now, about to record her debut album with the independent classical label that had signed her after the Van Cliburn competition. The producer was a middle-aged woman named Sarah who had worked with several successful classical artists. She was friendly but exacting, with strong opinions about sound quality and interpretation. Recording an album was completely different from performing live. In concert, you played through pieces once, and whatever happened became part of the performance. In the studio, you played the same passage over and over, hunting for the perfect take. Maya would play a 3-minute section, then Sarah would say, "Good, but let's do it again." I heard a slight unevenness in measure 42. The process was tedious and mentally exhausting. Maya had chosen a program of romantic pieces by Chopin, Schumann, and Rachmaninoff, music that showcased her emotional depth. But after playing the same Chopin nocturne 15 times, trying to nail one particular phrase, she felt the emotion draining out of the music. It was becoming mechanical, technical exercise rather than expression. Sarah noticed Maya's frustration during a break. "I know this is hard," she said, "but we're creating something permanent. People will listen to this recording for years. It has to be right." She paused. "Let's take a longer break. Go walk around, clear your head. Come back when you feel connected to the music again." Maya went outside into the cool evening air. She called her mother, who was at work cleaning offices. Lynn answered between tasks, her voice tired but warm. "How's it going?" Lynn asked. "It's hard," Maya admitted. "I keep making tiny mistakes. I can't seem to get it perfect." "Maybe perfect isn't the goal," Lynn said. "Maybe honest is the goal. Play it the way you feel it, not the way you think it should sound." The simple wisdom helped. Maya went back inside and told Sarah she wanted to try a different approach. Instead of hunting for technical perfection, she wanted to play each piece through a few times and choose the take that felt most authentic, even if it had small imperfections. Sarah was hesitant but agreed to try it Maya's way. The result was better. The recordings had life in them, emotional truth that technical perfection alone couldn't capture. When Maya listened to the playback, she felt something she hadn't felt during all those perfect but cold takes. She felt moved by her own playing. The album was released 6 months later with a simple cover, a photo of Maya at the piano. Her face in profile, lights streaming through a window behind her. The title was just her name, Maya Chen. No gimmicks, no elaborate marketing, just the music. The reviews were mostly positive. Critics praised her emotional maturity and her fresh interpretations of familiar pieces. Some noted that her technique, while impressive, wasn't quite at the level of established concert pianists, but they argued that her musicality more than compensated. A few critics were harsh, suggesting she had been overhyped due to her compelling personal story rather than her actual abilities. Maya tried not to obsess over reviews, but it was hard not to take criticism personally. Each negative comment felt like a confirmation of her deepest fear, that she wasn't truly good enough. That her success was built more on sympathy than talent. Professor Steinberg, now more of a mentor than a teacher, helped her navigate these feelings. Every great musician faces criticism, she said. People criticized Horowitz, they criticized Rubinstein. They'll criticize anyone who puts themselves out there. You can't let it paralyze you. Take the constructive feedback, ignore the rest, and keep working. Around this time, Maya started thinking seriously about college. She was nearing the end of high school, and decisions needed to be made about her future. Several university music programs had offered her scholarships, including some prestigious conservatories. But attending college full-time would mean stepping back from performance opportunities that were starting to build her career. Her agency suggested she considered taking a gap year to focus on building her concert profile. More venues wanted to book her, and there was talk of a European tour. If she committed to college, she might lose this momentum. But Lynn worried about her daughter having no formal education beyond high school. What if the music career didn't work out? What would Maya have to fall back on? Maya felt torn. Part of her wanted the normal college experience, the chance to study broadly and meet people outside the music world. Another part felt that her window of opportunity was now, that she needed to pursue performance while people were interested. She sat down with Professor Steinberg to discuss the dilemma. Her former teacher listened carefully, then asked a pointed question. What do you want from your music career? Do you want to be a concert soloist, performing in major halls around the world? Or do you want a different kind of musical life? Maya thought about it carefully. I want to perform, she said. I want to connect with audiences, to share music that moves people. That's what I've always wanted. Then you know what you need to do, Professor Steinberg said. The path to being a concert soloist requires total commitment at your age. You can always go to college later, but the performance opportunities you have now might not be there in 4 years. The classical music world has a short attention span. They're excited about young talents, but that excitement fades if you disappear for 4 years of college. Maya made her decision. She would defer college and focus on building her performance career. Lynn wasn't entirely happy about it, but she respected her daughter's choice. They compromised. Maya would take online courses in subjects that interested her, keeping her education going even while pursuing music full-time. At 18, Maya embarked on her first international tour. She would perform in concert halls across Europe, including venues she had only dreamed about when she was a little girl, pressing keys on their old upright piano. The tour was organized by her agency and a European promoter who specialized in emerging classical artists. The first concert was in London, at a respected but not enormous hall. Maya arrived jet-lagged and nervous, worried about how European audiences would receive her. Classical music had deep roots in Europe, and she was an unknown American teenager trying to make an impression. The concert sold well, partly due to her social media following, which had grown to hundreds of thousands. Many younger people came, drawn by her online presence and her story. This was unusual for classical concerts, which typically attracted older, traditional audiences. Some established critics were skeptical about this social media-driven crowd, questioning whether they were true classical music lovers or just curious internet followers. Maya understood the skepticism, but she also saw it as an opportunity. If her presence could bring younger people into classical concert halls, wasn't that valuable? Classical music needed new audiences to survive. If social media could build that bridge, why was it considered less legitimate? She walked onto the London stage, determined to prove herself, not just to the critics, but to everyone who had bought a ticket. She had chosen a bold program: Bach, Beethoven, and contemporary composers. The mix of old and new, traditional and modern, felt representative of who she was as a musician. The performance went well, though not perfectly. She stumbled slightly in a difficult Bach fugue, a mistake that made her heart race. But she recovered smoothly and continued. The Beethoven was powerful, and the contemporary pieces showcased her ability to interpret modern sounds. The audience responded enthusiastically, with a standing ovation that felt genuine rather than polite. The reviews the next day were mixed. The Times called her a promising young talent with room to grow. The Guardian praised her emotional honesty but noted occasional technical imprecision. One critic suggested that while she was good, she wasn't yet at the level her online following might suggest. Another argued that her presence was exactly what classical music needed: young, authentic, and unafraid to connect with new audiences. Maya read the reviews in her hotel room, feeling the familiar swirl of emotions: pride in what she had accomplished, disappointment at the criticism, frustration at never quite being good enough for everyone. She thought about calling her mother, but decided against it. Lynn would be sleeping, and Maya needed to figure out how to handle these feelings herself. She remembered something Jin, her violinist friend from the summer festival, had told her. We can't control what critics say or what audiences think. We can only control whether we're honest in our music. If you play honestly, some people will love it, and some won't. That's not failure. That's just life. The tour continued through Europe: Amsterdam, Berlin, Vienna, Paris. Each city brought new audiences, new critics, new experiences. Maya learned to adapt to different acoustics, different piano qualities, different performance customs. She grew as a performer, becoming more confident on stage, more able to connect with audiences despite language barriers. In Vienna, a city with a legendary classical music history, Maya performed at a prestigious hall where Mozart and Beethoven had once walked. Standing on that stage, she felt the weight of history and the improbability of her presence there. A girl from a poor family, who had started on a broken piano in a tiny apartment, was now performing in one of the world's great musical cities. The Viennese audience was reserved and traditional, not given to easy enthusiasm, but after Maya's performance of Schubert, an Austrian composer, they applauded with genuine warmth. An elderly gentleman came up to her after the concert, speaking in heavily accented English. I have been attending concerts in this hall for 50 years, he said. Tonight, you reminded me why I fell in love with music as a young man. Thank you for that gift. The comment meant more to Maya than any professional review. This was why she played, why she endured the criticism and pressure and doubt. For moments like this, when music created a genuine human connection across age, language, and culture. Maya returned from her European tour exhausted but fulfilled. She was 19 now, no longer the child prodigy but a young professional musician trying to establish a lasting career. The tour had been successful enough to book another one, this time including dates in Asia and Australia. Her agency was pleased with her progress, and offers for performances continued to arrive. But something had shifted inside Maya during those months abroad. She had seen how other young musicians lived, the ones from wealthy backgrounds who could afford to focus solely on music without financial worry. She had stayed in budget hotels while they stayed in luxury accommodations. She had traveled economy class while they flew business. She had carefully counted her per diem money while they dined at expensive restaurants without checking prices. These differences had never bothered her before, or at least she had accepted them as unchangeable facts of her life. But now, as her career grew, she felt the weight of those disparities more heavily. She was competing at the same level as these privileged musicians, but the playing field would never truly be level. They could afford to turn down opportunities that didn't perfectly align with their artistic vision. Maya couldn't afford that luxury. Every paid performance mattered because her family still needed the money. Lynn's health had been declining. Years of working multiple physically demanding jobs had taken their toll. She had developed chronic back pain and arthritis in her hands. Some days, she could barely get out of bed. Maya sent money home regularly now, trying to ease her mother's burden, but it wasn't enough. The medical bills were mounting, and Lin was too proud to stop working completely. Maya found herself performing not just for the love of music anymore, but also out of necessity. She needed to earn enough to support her mother, to pay for her own expenses, to justify all the years of sacrifice. The joy that had once been pure was now mixed with pressure and obligation. One evening, after a concert in Chicago, Maya sat alone in her hotel room and cried. She felt trapped by expectations, exhausted by the constant pressure to be extraordinary, guilty about not spending enough time with her mother, and uncertain about whether this was truly the life she wanted. She had achieved more than she ever dreamed possible as a child. But success hadn't brought the peace or happiness she had imagined. She called Professor Steinberg, who had remained her closest mentor through everything. The older woman listened quietly as Maya poured out her feelings, all the doubts and fears she had been holding inside. "What you're experiencing is very common," Professor Steinberg said gently when Maya finally fell silent. "The pressure of professional music can be overwhelming. You're no longer playing just for yourself, or even just for audiences. You're playing to earn money, to maintain your career, to justify all the sacrifices made for you. That changes the relationship with music." "I still love playing," Maya said. "But sometimes I can't remember why I started. Sometimes I sit at the piano and feel nothing but anxiety about whether I'll play well enough." Professor Steinberg was quiet for a moment. "Then perhaps you need to reconnect with the reason you started playing in the first place. Do you remember?" Maya thought back to being 5 years old, climbing onto the bench of their old piano, discovering sounds that made her heart soar. No audience, no critics, no money, no pressure. Just the pure joy of creating music. "I played because it made me happy," Maya said softly. "Because the music felt like magic." "That magic is still there," Professor Steinberg said. "But you have to protect it. Not every performance needs to be about career advancement or earning money. Sometimes you need to play just for yourself, just for the love of it." The conversation helped Maya gain perspective. She started making changes to how she approached her career. She began turning down some lucrative opportunities that felt creatively empty, choosing instead performances that genuinely excited her. She started playing smaller, more intimate venues occasionally, where the pressure was less intense and the connection with audiences felt more direct. She also started teaching. A local music school asked if she would take on a few students, and Maya surprised herself by saying yes. She had never imagined herself as a teacher, but working with young pianists reminded her of her own journey. She had one student, a 10-year-old girl from an immigrant family, who reminded Maya of herself at that age. The girl's parents worked long hours and couldn't afford expensive lessons, but the child had raw talent and burning passion. Maya gave the girl a scholarship rate, barely charging anything. She saw herself in this child's eager eyes, heard echoes of her own story in the family's struggles. Teaching this student wasn't about money. It was about passing forward the gift that Mr. Petrov and Professor Steinberg had given her, the belief that talent deserved support regardless of economic circumstances. When Maya turned 20, she received an invitation that felt like a full-circle moment. The National Symphony Orchestra invited her to perform as a soloist with them, playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 with a full orchestra. It was a major performance in a prominent venue, the kind of opportunity that could significantly raise her profile. Lin was healthy enough to attend, though she moved slowly now, using a cane for support. She sat in the audience wearing a new dress that Maya had bought for her, tears already in her eyes before the music even started. In the same audience sat Mr. Petrov, now in his 80s and rarely leaving his home, but he had insisted on coming to hear his former student perform with a major orchestra. Maya walked onto the stage in an elegant black gown, her hair styled professionally, looking every bit the accomplished concert pianist. But inside, she was still that little girl from the cramped apartment, the one who had played on a broken piano with yellowed keys. She carried that girl with her always, a reminder of where she came from and why she had fought so hard to get here. The performance was magical. Playing with a full orchestra was completely different from solo performance, requiring her to listen carefully and blend with dozens of other musicians. The Rachmaninoff Concerto was technically demanding and emotionally rich, sweeping from tender moments to powerful crescendos. Maya poured everything into it, all her years of experience, all her struggles and triumphs, all her love for music that had survived despite every obstacle. When the final notes faded away, there was a moment of absolute silence before the audience erupted. People leaped to their feet. The applause seemed to go on forever. The conductor embraced Maya. The orchestra members tapped their bows on their music stands in the traditional gesture of approval. Maya bowed again and again, tears streaming down her face. She looked out into the audience and found her mother, saw Lynn standing and clapping with tears running down her cheeks too. Next to her, Mr. Petrov was standing as well, a handkerchief pressed to his eyes. Professor Steinberg was there too, smiling with quiet satisfaction. All the people who had believed in Maya when she was nobody, when success seemed impossible, were there to witness this moment. After the performance, Maya was surrounded by wishes. Music critics who had previously been skeptical now offered glowing praise. Wealthy patrons wanted to support her career. Other musicians congratulated her warmly. It was overwhelming and gratifying, but Maya kept looking past them, wanting to reach her mother. Finally, she broke away from the crowd and found Lynn waiting in a quiet corner. They embraced without speaking, both crying. No words were adequate for everything that embrace contained. All the sacrifices, all the belief, all the love that had made this moment possible. "You did it," Lynn whispered finally. "You really did it." "We did it," Maya corrected her. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Mr. Petrov came over, moving slowly with his cane. He looked at Maya with profound emotion. "I knew," he said in his thick Russian accent. "That first day when you were 6 years old, I knew you had something special. I am so proud to have been your teacher." Maya hugged the elderly man gently. "You gave me the foundation for everything. You believed in me when no one else did." The success of that performance opened even more doors. Major concert halls across the country wanted to book her. International orchestras reached out about guest performances. Recording labels expressed interest in more albums. Maya's career was truly launching at the highest levels. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came a few weeks later. Maya was giving a masterclass at the Riverside Music Academy where she had once been a scholarship student. She talked to the young musicians about technique, interpretation, and the challenges of building a career in classical music. Then she opened the floor for questions. A small girl in the back, maybe 10 years old, raised her hand hesitantly. "My family doesn't have much money," the girl said quietly. "My teacher says I'm talented, but I'm worried I won't be able to keep studying music. How did you keep going when things were hard?" Maya looked at this child and saw herself 15 years earlier. She took a moment before answering, wanting to be honest. "There were many times I wanted to quit," Maya said. "Times when it seemed impossible to continue. But I learned that talent isn't just about playing well. It's about refusing to give up, even when giving up would be easier. It's about finding people who believe in you and letting them help. It's about working harder than everyone else because you have to, not because you want to." She paused, then continued. "But here's the most important thing I learned. Your background doesn't define your potential. Poverty makes everything harder, but it doesn't make anything impossible. You have to fight for your dreams in ways that privileged kids never have to fight. That's not fair, but it's reality. The question is whether your dream is worth fighting for." The girl nodded seriously, and Maya saw tears in her eyes. After the class, the girl's mother approached Maya. She thanked her for her words and explained that they were struggling to afford lessons, wondering if Maya might have any advice. Maya thought for a moment, then made a decision. She asked for the family's contact information and promised to help them find resources. Later, she reached out to Professor Steinberg and arranged for the girl to receive a scholarship at the academy. Just as Maya herself had once received, it was a small thing in the grand scheme of things, helping one child. But Maya remembered how one teacher's belief, one scholarship, one opportunity had changed her entire life. Maybe she could be that person for someone else. Maybe this was how the gift kept moving forward, passed from one generation to the next. Maya's career continued to grow over the following years. She performed in prestigious venues, recorded more albums, won awards and recognition. But she never forgot where she came from. She established a foundation to provide scholarships for talented young musicians from low-income families. She performed at benefit concerts to raise money for music education programs. She spoke openly about her struggles, refusing to pretend that talent alone had been enough. The old piano from her childhood, the one with yellowed keys and stuck notes, still sat in her mother's apartment. Maya kept it there as a reminder. Sometimes, when she visited her mother, she would sit at that old instrument and play, feeling the familiar resistance of its worn keys. The sound was nothing like the concert grands she performed on, but somehow, playing that piano still felt like home. She had been told she would never make it. People had doubted her because of her poverty, her lack of connections, her background. Critics had questioned whether she was truly talented or just an inspiring story. There had been countless moments when giving up would have been easier than continuing, but Maya had made it, not because she was perfect, not because the path was easy, but because she had refused to let circumstances define her possibilities. Her piano hadn't just amazed the world. It had proven that dreams could survive poverty, that talent could flourish without privilege, that determination and love could overcome almost any obstacle. And every time she sat down to perform, whether in a grand concert hall or at that old upright piano at home, she was still that 5-year-old girl discovering magic in music, still finding joy in the sound of keys beneath her fingers, still believing that beautiful things could emerge from the most unlikely places.